The pre-dawn darkness of Nellie's Air Force Base smelled like jet fuel and possibility. Captain Maya Rodriguez walked across the tarmac, her flight boots echoing against concrete still cool from the Nevada night. Above her, stars were fading into deep purple, and somewhere in the distance, another F-16 roared to life, a sound that still sent electricity down her spine even after 7 years. 7 years. Sometimes it felt like 70, sometimes like 7 minutes. She approached her aircraft, running her hand along the fuselage like greeting an old friend. The ground crew had already completed their checks, but Maya did her own anyway. Trust, but verify. That's what her father always said back when he was teaching her to fly his beat-up Cessna in the California desert, long before she ever dreamed of supersonic jets. "Morning, Captain." Senior Airman Davis handed her the flight manifest, grinning. "Heard you're babysitting the new guys today." Maya smirked. Babysitting, that's one word for it. Today's exercise was straightforward: lead a formation of 4 jets through tactical maneuvers over the desert ranges, training runs. The kind of mission that paid the bills but didn't exactly get your blood pumping. Still, someone had to teach the rookies, and apparently that someone was her. She climbed into the cockpit, the familiar ritual grounding her. Strap in, check instruments, radio check, fuel, weapons systems unarmed today, just practice. Everything by the book, exactly how she'd done it 1,000 times before. The sun was just cresting the horizon now, painting the desert in shades of amber and gold. "Tower, this is Viper 2-1, ready for taxi." "Viper 2-1, you're cleared. Winds 270 at 8. Beautiful morning for flying, Captain." If only they knew how much she needed this. Yesterday had been brutal. Another round of congressional hearings about diversity in combat roles, her face plastered on every news channel as the example of women in fighter jets. She hated being the poster child. She just wanted to fly. Her wingman, Lieutenant Marcus Chen, pulled up alongside her on the taxiway. Through the canopy she could see him flash a thumbs up. Good kid. Eager. Reminded her of herself back when everything was still shiny and new. The tower cleared them for takeoff. Maya pushed the throttle forward, feeling 30,000 pounds of thrust slam her back into her seat. The ground blurred, fell away, and then freedom. Pure, perfect freedom. This was the moment that made everything else worth it. The discrimination, the doubts, the 1,000 times someone had told her girls couldn't fly fighters. At 15,000 feet, the world transformed. The spring mountains sprawled to the west, their peaks catching the morning light like broken teeth. Lake Mead glinted far to the south. The desert below looked like crumpled copper foil, endless and ancient. "Viper 2-1, all aircraft report in," Maya called. 2-2 good. 2-3 good. 2-4 good. 4 jets, perfect formation, slicing through crystal-clear sky. Maya allowed herself a smile. Maybe this wouldn't be boring after all. There was something meditative about formation flying, the precision required, the trust between pilots. 2-1, this is 2-2, Chen's voice crackled. $20 says you can't pull off that inverted pass you did last month. "Chen, are you seriously trying to bet me while we're airborne?" "Just saying, the guys in the ready room are still talking about it." Maya laughed despite herself. "How about we focus on not getting everyone killed first, then we'll discuss my legendary flying skills." The banter continued as they ran through the exercise, banking turns, altitude changes, simulated intercepts. Easy stuff. Maya's mind wandered slightly, thinking about tonight. Her mom's birthday dinner. She'd promised to be there, promised to be on time for once. 7 years of missed holidays, and she was trying to make up for it. The radio was filled with the comfortable chatter of routine flight. Weather updates, course corrections. Someone making a joke about the bland breakfast burritos in the mess hall. Normal, safe, predictable. Maya checked her instruments. Fuel good, all systems nominal, 42 minutes into the exercise. That's when it happened. A burst of static, sharp and wrong. Then a frequency override, something Maya had trained for but never actually experienced. Emergency civilian channel cutting through everything. The voice that came through was male, strained, fighting panic. Mayday, mayday, mayday. This is Med Evac 79er. We are down. Repeat, we are down in the Spring Mountains. Coordinates. Static consumed the transmission, then returned. Critically injured. We have a pediatric patient, heart transplant candidate, life support failing. We need immediate assistance. Please, if anyone can hear this, send help. Maya's world tilted. The peaceful morning, the routine exercise, the thoughts of birthday dinner, all of it evaporated in an instant. Her eyes snapped to the mountains in the distance, suddenly menacing instead of beautiful. Viper 2-1, this is Nellie's tower. We have the distress call. Ground rescue is being scrambled. Maintain your current heading and altitude. This is not your mission. Acknowledge. Maya's hand gripped the throttle. A child, life support failing. The mountains where ground rescue would take, she did the math instantly, at least 2 hours to reach, probably more in that terrain. Maybe 3 if weather rolled in. Viper 2-1, acknowledge. The tower repeated more firmly. Her finger hovered over the radio switch. Everything she was, everything she'd fought to become, hung in the balance. The choice wasn't even a choice, not really. It was instinct, bone-deep and undeniable. Maya Rodriguez had always played by the rules. Until the moment she didn't. Maya's heartbeat thundered in her ears, drowning out the engine noise. She switched frequencies, isolating the emergency channel. Med Evac 79er, this is Air Force Captain Rodriguez. What's your status? How many souls on board? The response came through broken and desperate. Captain, thank God, 5 souls. Pilot, 2 nurses, surgeon, and a wet cough, the sound of pain, 7-year-old male patient. Connor Hayes. He's got a Berlin heart temporary pump for transplant candidates. Battery shows 58 minutes remaining. Maybe 90 if we're lucky. Pilot has tension pneumothorax, I can barely breathe. We clipped a ridge in the wind shear, came down hard in a canyon. Coordinates. He rattled off numbers that burned into Maya's brain. 90 minutes maximum. She pulled up her navigation display, fingers flying across the touchscreen. The crash site was 63 miles east, deep in a canyon system that ground vehicles would need hours to navigate. The nearest road was 12 miles from the coordinates, 12 miles of boulder fields and slot canyons. Med Evac 79er, help is coming. Stay with me. Keep that boy stable. We're trying, Captain, but his pump, if it fails before transplant, the voice broke. He's 7 years old, just 7. Maya's vision blurred. 7. The same age her sister Elena had been when she'd nearly died from that car accident. Maya had been 12, sitting in a hospital waiting room, watching her mother pray in Spanish, watching her father pace holes in the linoleum. Powerless. Completely powerless while Elena fought for life 3 floors up. Viper 2-1, this is Nellie's tower. Acknowledge immediately. Her commander's voice now sharp with authority. Captain Rodriguez, you are ordered to maintain heading and complete your mission. Rescue teams are en route. Maya switched back to the emergency channel. Med Evac 79er, what's the weather looking like at your position? Bad and getting worse, Captain. Front moving in from the west. We've got maybe 40 minutes before this canyon fills with clouds, maybe less. She pulled up the weather radar. He was right. A storm system was rolling off the Pacific, already dumping rain on the California border. It would hit the Spring Mountains within the hour, turning an already difficult rescue into a potential death sentence. Helicopters couldn't fly in 0 visibility through narrow canyons. Ground teams would be slowed to a crawl. The math was brutal and simple. 90 minutes of battery life minus 40 minutes, until the weather made helicopter rescue impossible minus 2 hours minimum for ground teams. To arrive equaled 1 dead child. 2-1, this is Tower. Respond now or you'll be in violation of direct orders. Maya's training was screaming at her. Chain of command, protocol. There were reasons for these rules: safety, coordination, preventing chaos. She was a fighter pilot, not a rescue worker. Her jet had no cargo capacity, no medical equipment, couldn't land anywhere near that terrain. What could she possibly do? But her mind was already working the problem, pilot instincts overriding regulations. Boulder City Airport was 23 miles from her current position, small civilian field, but it had helicopters. Flight schools operated out of there, if she could get to one. No, insane. She'd have to abandon her formation, lie to her commander, steal civilian aircraft, fly an unauthorized rescue mission into deteriorating weather. Career suicide, criminal charges, everything she'd worked for gone. Viper 2-1, final warning. Acknowledge and comply or face immediate disciplinary action. Maya looked down at the mountains. Somewhere in those canyons, a 7-year-old boy named Connor was dying. His heart, the heart keeping him alive until a donor could be found, was running on battery power that ticked down like a bomb. She imagined his parents, probably in Las Vegas right now, waiting for their son to arrive, not knowing he'd never make it. She thought about Alina, who'd survived because an EMT had broken protocol to get to their accident faster, who'd arrived with 4 minutes to spare before her sister bled out. The EMT had been reprimanded, had told Maya years later, worth it, every time worth it. 2-2, this is 2-1, Maya said, her voice steady despite her racing pulse. I need you to take lead on the exercise. Continue the mission profile. Maya, what are you doing? Chen's voice carried concern, confusion. Something stupid, maybe something right, I don't know yet. She banked hard left, breaking formation. Her warning systems immediately lit up, the other pilots trying to hail her, tower communications going haywire. Maya took a breath that felt like swallowing glass. Nellie's tower, this is Viper 2-1. I'm experiencing instrument malfunction. Gyroscope showing erratic readings. Requesting emergency landing, Boulder City Airport. The lie came out smooth, practiced, like she'd rehearsed it. She hadn't. Every word felt like betrayal of her training, her oath, her integrity. The tower controller paused. She could imagine the chaos in the control room right now. 2-1, what's the nature of your malfunction? Can you maintain controlled flight? Affirmative, controlled flight maintained, but instruments are unreliable. Boulder City is nearest suitable airfield. Another lie. Nellie's was closer. She was diverting to Boulder City for one reason only, the helicopters. 2-1, you are cleared for emergency landing, Boulder City. Squawk 7700. We're notifying local authorities. Roger, squawking 7700. The emergency transponder code. Now everyone would know something was wrong. Maya pushed her F-16 into a dive, the desert floor rushing up at sickening speed. Her hands were shaking now. Behind her, she could hear Chen trying to raise her on their private channel. She didn't answer. Couldn't. If she heard the confusion in his voice, the betrayal, she might lose her nerve. The med-evac pilot came back on frequency, weaker now. Captain, you still there? Still here, hang on, just hang on. The boy, he's asking for his mom. Maya's throat closed. She pushed the throttle, screaming across the sky at 600 knots. Boulder City appeared on the horizon, small, dusty, perfect. As she lined up for approach, her radio exploded with traffic. Her commander demanding explanation. Tower asking for clarification. Chen pleading with her to talk to him. She switched it all off. Every channel, every voice. Just her and the sky, and a choice that couldn't be unmade. The landing was textbook perfect. She'd never flown so precisely while her entire world was falling apart. Maya popped the canopy before the jet had fully stopped, already unbuckling, already running toward the small terminal building where, through the window, she could see a beautiful, impossible Bell 206 helicopter. 53 minutes of battery life remaining. The clock was ticking. Maya's boots hit the tarmac with a force that sent shockwaves up her legs. She was already sprinting before her parachute harness was fully clear, leaving her helmet and gear scattered across the runway like breadcrumbs of her disintegrating career. The small terminal building of Boulder City Airport seemed a mile away, shimmering in the desert heat that was just beginning to build. Her flight suit was soaked through with sweat, not from the temperature but from the sheer magnitude of what she was doing. With every step, a voice in her head screamed the consequences: court-martial, dishonorable discharge, prison time, the end of everything she'd sacrificed for. Her father's disappointed face flashed in her mind. All those nights he'd worked double shifts to afford her flight lessons. Her mother's tears of pride when she'd earned her wings. Gone, all of it gone. But louder than that voice was another sound. A 7-year-old boy asking for his mother while a mechanical heart ticked down to zero. The helicopter sat on the apron like salvation wrapped in metal and glass. A Bell 206 Jet Ranger civilian model, probably used for scenic tour over Lake Mead and the Grand Canyon. Not designed for mountain rescue. Not designed for what Maya was about to demand of it. But it would fly, and right now, that was all that mattered. An older man in oil-stained coveralls was performing a pre-flight check, running his hands along the tail rotor. Gray hair, military bearing despite the civilian clothes, probably late 60s. Maya's trained eye caught the USMC tattoo on his forearm. "I need that helicopter." Maya's voice came out harder than she intended, raw with desperation. The man, Frank, his name tape read, turned slowly, taking in her flight suit, the captain's bars, the wild look in her eyes. "This is private property, Captain, and that bird's scheduled for a tourist flight in 40 minutes. Cancel it." Maya closed the distance between them. "There's a medical helicopter down in the Spring Mountains. 5 people, including a child with a failing artificial heart. He's got maybe 50 minutes before his life support dies. Ground rescue won't make it in time." Frank's weathered face didn't change expression. "You Air Force?" "Yes." "Then why aren't you coordinating through your base? Nellie's has rescue choppers." "Because they'd take too long to authorize, to plan, to execute. By the time they go through channels, that boy will be dead." Maya grabbed his shoulders, not caring about protocol anymore, not caring about anything except the seconds bleeding away. "I flew helicopters before I flew jets. My father taught me on a Huey when I was 16. I can do this, but I need that aircraft. Now." Frank studied her face, and Maya saw the calculation happening behind his eyes. Former Marine. He understood chain of command. He also understood that sometimes the rules got people killed. "You're asking me to let you steal my helicopter." "I'm asking you to help me save a child's life." Behind them, sirens wailed in the distance. Red and blue lights flickered on the horizon. Military police, probably, alerted by the tower about her emergency landing. They'd be here in minutes. Once they arrived, this conversation was over. Maya would be detained, and Connor Hayes would become another statistic. Frank's jaw worked. "That bird's worth $500,000. I'll bring it back." The promise felt hollow even as she said it. She might not bring anything back, might crash it in those mountains, might end up as wreckage herself. "You better." Frank reached into his pocket and pulled out a key ring. "She's fully fueled. Handles a bit heavy in crosswinds. Don't overload her or you'll drop like a stone." Maya's hand closed around the keys, the metal warm from Frank's pocket. "Thank you." "Don't thank me, just don't make me regret this." He stepped back, his voice dropping. "And Captain, whatever you're running from, I hope it's worth it." "It is." Maya yanked open the helicopter's door and threw herself into the pilot's seat. Her hands moved on autopilot, master switch, fuel pump, throttle. The turbine began to whine, building toward operational RPM. Through the windscreen, she could see the military police vehicles screaming into the airport, dust plumes marking their approach like warning flags. The radio crackled to life. "Civilian helicopter November 7-3 Delta Mike, this is Boulder City Tower. You are not cleared for departure. Repeat, You are not authorized. Maya's finger found the radio switch. For just a moment she hesitated. This was it, the final point of no return. Once she lifted off, she was a criminal, a deserter. Everything her parents had taught her about honor and duty and following the rules would be shattered. She thought about Alina again. Thought about that EMT who'd broken every speed limit, who'd run red lights, who'd risked his career and his life to get to a 12-year-old girl bleeding out in a wrecked Honda Civic. Worth it, he'd said, every time worth it. Maya switched off the radio. The military police vehicle skidded to a halt 50 yards away. Doors flew open. Men in uniform emerged, shouting, gesturing for her to shut down. One was reaching for his sidearm, not to shoot, she knew, but to show he meant business. She pulled collective, and the helicopter lurched into the air. Someone was running toward her now, arms waving frantically. Through the side window she saw Frank standing still, arms crossed, watching her go. Was that approval in his eyes, or pity? The helicopter climbed, nosed over, and accelerated toward the mountains. Behind her, Boulder City Airport receded into the desert haze. Ahead, storm clouds gathered over the spring mountains like bruises on the sky. Maya's radio, the one built into the helicopter, erupted with voices. Her commander, fury making his words almost incomprehensible. Tower control, demanding she return immediately. Even Chen, her wingman, begging her to explain what was happening. She recognized her commander's voice cutting through the chaos. Captain Rodriguez, you are hereby ordered to land that aircraft immediately. You are AWOL. You are in violation of the Uniform Code of Military Justice. If you do not comply, you will face the full consequences of military law. Maya, for God's sake, think about what you're doing. Maya's hand hovered over the radio. Part of her wanted to explain, to make them understand. But what could she say? That she was choosing a stranger's child over her career. That she was betting everything on a rescue mission she wasn't trained for, in an aircraft she'd barely flown, into conditions that violated every safety protocol. There were no words that would make this make sense. She looked at the radio one last time. Thought about all the voices she'd listened to her entire career. Instructors, commanders, regulations, rules. The voices that had shaped her into a perfect officer, a perfect pilot, a perfect example of military discipline. Then she thought about Connor Hayes asking for his mother. Maya ripped the radio completely off, yanked the wires free, and threw the entire unit out the open side door. It tumbled away into the desert below, taking with it the last connection to the life she used to have. The helicopter's engine screamed as she pushed it to maximum speed. The mountains loomed ahead, their peaks already disappearing into cloud cover. 46 minutes of battery life remaining. She was alone now, completely, utterly alone. And she'd never been more certain of anything in her life. The Bell 206 vibrated through Maya's entire body as she pushed it beyond its comfort zone, the airspeed indicator creeping into the yellow arc. 60 knots, 70, 80. The airframe shuddered in protest, but she didn't ease back. Every second counted, every mile mattered. The desert floor blurred beneath her, giving way to scrub brush, then scattered pines, then the first rocky outcroppings of the spring mountains. Maya's eyes scanned the horizon, marking landmarks, calculating approach vectors. She'd flown over these mountains 100 times in her F-16, but never like this, low, slow, vulnerable. From 30,000 feet, they'd been beautiful. At 500 feet, they were teeth waiting to bite. The coordinates the med-evac pilot had given her burned in her mind. She'd memorized them, etched them into her consciousness because she had no GPS, no navigation system beyond the basic VFR instruments in this civilian bird. She was navigating by dead reckoning and instinct, the way her father had taught her before computers did all the thinking. The wind hit without warning, a violent gust that slammed the helicopter sideways. Maya fought the controls, correcting, her arms straining against the cyclic. The storm front was arriving faster than predicted. She could see it now, a wall of darkness consuming the western peaks, lightning flickering in its belly like angry gods. 41 minutes. The first raindrops splattered against the windscreen, fat and heavy. Then more. Within seconds, visibility dropped from clear to obscured, the mountains ahead turning into gray shadows. Maya dropped altitude, following the terrain, using every trick she'd ever learned. Too high and she'd lose sight of the ground. Too low and she'd clip a ridge and become wreckage herself. Her hands were cramping on the controls, white-knuckled and aching. The helicopter bucked and yawed in the turbulence, fighting her every input. This wasn't the smooth, responsive handling of an F-16. This was wrestling with an angry machine that wanted to kill her. A canyon opened up ahead, narrow, twisting, exactly matching the coordinates. Maya's heart hammered. This had to be it. She dropped lower, the rotor wash kicking up spray from the rain-slicked rocks. The canyon walls pressed in on both sides, so close she could see individual stones, ancient petroglyphs carved by people who died centuries before she was born. Then she saw it. The wreckage was worse than she'd imagined. The medical helicopter lay crumpled against the canyon wall like a crushed aluminum can. Its tail boom snapped clean off, main rotor blades twisted into grotesque sculptures. Somehow it hadn't exploded, small mercies in a world of terrible luck, but it was never flying again. Maya keyed her backup radio, a handheld unit she'd found in the helicopter's emergency kit. Med Evac 79er, this is Captain Rodriguez. I have you visual. I'm coming in. Captain, the voice was weaker now, threaded with pain and disbelief. You're here, how? Long story, I need a landing zone. What do you have? Nothing, canyon's too narrow. We barely fit coming down and we crashed doing it. Maya circled, her pilot's eye scanning every surface. He was right. The canyon floor was boulder-strewn chaos. The walls too steep. No clearing, no flat ground, nothing that looked remotely like a safe landing zone. Except 50 feet from the wreck, a massive boulder jutted from the canyon floor like a platform. Maybe 20 feet across, relatively flat on top, barely large enough for the helicopter's skids. Landing there would be threading a needle in a hurricane, with rocks waiting below to tear her apart if she miscalculated by inches. I see a spot, Maya said. Stand by. She brought the helicopter into a hover, fighting the wind that tried to dash her against the canyon walls. Rain hammered the windscreen now, turning the world into a watercolor painting. The boulder wavered in and out of focus through the deluge. Maya had made thousands of landings, none like this. She descended in tiny increments, watching her altitude, her position relative to the canyon walls, the boulder's surface coming up to meet her. The downdraft from her rotors sent water spraying in all directions, further obscuring her view. She was flying by feel now, by instinct, by the connection between her hands and the machine that only came from years of experience. 10 feet, 5 feet. The left skid touched stone, impact that jarred through the entire airframe. Maya corrected, bringing the right skid down. The helicopter rocked on the uneven surface, teetering. For one heart-stopping moment, she thought it would tip, send them all tumbling into the abyss. Then it settled, stabled down. Maya killed the engine and sat for a moment, hands shaking, heart trying to punch through her ribs. She'd done it. Impossibly, insanely, she'd done it. No time to celebrate. She threw open the door and jumped down, rain immediately soaking through her flight suit. The distance to the wreck was short but treacherous, slick rocks, uncertain footing, debris scattered everywhere. She half ran, half stumbled, reaching the crumpled fuselage. The pilot was exactly where she'd expected, strapped into his seat, face gray, breathing in short, painful gasps. Collapsed lung, definitely. Maybe worse. But he was conscious, focused, professional despite the agony. Captain, he managed something like a smile. You're crazier than I am. Clearly, Maya looked past him into the cabin. Two nurses, both injured but mobile, were hunched over a small form on a stretcher. Connor Hayes, 7 years old, so small, too small for all of this. The boy's eyes were closed, his chest rising and falling with mechanical precision, the Berlin heart doing its job, keeping blood flowing while his own damaged heart waited for a transplant. But the machine's display was the stuff of nightmares. 37 minutes remaining. One of the nurses looked up, tears mixing with rain on her face. Thank God you're here. We need to move, now. Maya assessed the situation with tactical efficiency. I can take 3 people per trip. Who's most critical? The pilot shook his head, wincing at the movement. Kid first, then the nurses. They can keep him stable. I'll wait. Your lung. We'll hold another 20 minutes. His heart won't. Kids first, Captain. Always kids first. Maya wanted to argue, but he was right. She turned to the nurses. Can you move him? We have to. The battery. If we don't get him to the hospital in the next half hour, he's done. They worked quickly, efficiently, medical professionals who'd trained for disasters. The stretcher was damaged, so they improvised, using the backboard, strapping Connor down with whatever they could salvage. The boy's eyes fluttered open once, unfocused and frightened. Mom, his voice was barely a whisper. She's waiting for you, sweetheart, one nurse said, her voice breaking. Captain Rodriguez is going to fly you to her. Those eyes found Maya, and in them she saw Alina. Saw every scared child who'd ever needed help and found it or didn't. Saw the weight of a choice that couldn't be calculated in regulations or procedures. I've got you, Maya said, I promise. They carried Connor through the rain to the helicopter, the nurses struggling with the weight, Maya taking the lead, clearing obstacles. Getting him into the cabin took precious minutes, securing him, making sure the nurses could maintain his care during flight. Thunder cracked overhead, so loud it felt like the sky splitting open. Maya ran back to the wreck. The pilot was trying to free himself from his harness with one arm, the other hanging useless. Get the medical equipment, he said. Portable monitors, medications, defibrillator. She grabbed what she could, loading it frantically. The helicopter was going to be overloaded, dangerously so, but what choice did she have? 31 minutes. Maya made it back to the helicopter, threw the equipment inside. The nurses had Connor as stable as possible, the Berlin heart continuing its rhythmic pumping. But the battery indicator was a countdown to death, each minute a loss they couldn't recover. She climbed into the pilot's seat, started the engine. The helicopter groaned under the weight, the rotor struggling to build RPM. Warning lights illuminated the panel like a Christmas tree, overweight, center of gravity wrong, fuel consumption too high. Maya's hand trembled on the collective. She could dump some of the medical equipment, make the helicopter lighter, give herself better margins. But that equipment might be the difference between Connor living and dying, once they reached the hospital. She made her choice, pulled collective. The helicopter shuddered, complained, but lifted, inches at first, then feet. The boulder dropped away beneath them. They climbed out of the canyon, every control input a negotiation with physics and fate. The storm was fully upon them now, wind gusting from every direction, rain turning the world into a gray blur. Hang on, Maya said, to Connor, to the nurses, to herself. Las Vegas was 40 miles away. They'd have to cross the mountains, descend into the valley, navigate to University Medical Center. 27 minutes of battery life. The helicopter clawed its way into the storm, overloaded and struggling, carrying hope on mechanical wings. The helicopter fought Maya every inch of the way. Overloaded by at least 300 pounds, it climbed through the storm like a wounded bird, each foot of altitude purchased with sweat and prayer. The engine temperature gauge crept toward the red line. The fuel consumption rate was astronomical. And the wind was trying to kill them. Maya's arms burned from the constant corrections. Gust from the left, compensate. Downdraft, add power. Updraft, reduced before they slammed into the cloud ceiling. The mountain peaks invisible around them were waiting like silent predators, ready to claim anyone stupid enough to fly through this hellscape. "How's he doing?" Maya shouted over the engine noise. The senior nurse, Sharon, according to her name tag, had her fingers on Connor's neck counting his pulse. "Stable for now, but his pressure's dropping. The Berlin heart is compensating, but..." She didn't finish. Didn't need to. The battery display said everything, 22 minutes. Through breaks in the clouds, Maya caught glimpses of the terrain below, jagged ridges, vertical drops, places where a helicopter crash wouldn't leave enough pieces to identify. She pushed the thought away, focused on instruments, on feel, on the 1,000 tiny inputs that kept them airborne. The second nurse, younger, maybe 25, was crying silently while she adjusted Connor's IV. Her hands were steady despite the tears, professional to the core. "First rescue?" Maya asked, trying to keep her voice calm, trying to give them something to focus on besides the boy dying in front of them. "Third," the young nurse said. "First one where we crashed." "There's a first time for everything." A violent gust slammed them sideways. Maya's stomach lurched as the helicopter dropped 50 feet in an instant, the controls going mushy in her hands. She fought it, adding power, pulling them out of the plunge. Behind her, someone screamed. Equipment crashed against the cabin walls. "Everyone okay?" "We're good," Sharon said, but her voice was tight. "Connor's still with us." The boy's eyes were open now, staring at nothing. In shock, probably. His lips moved, forming words Maya couldn't hear over the engine. Sharon leaned close, listening, then looked up at Maya with an expression that broke her heart. "He wants to know if he's going to die." Maya's throat closed. What do you tell a 7-year-old? The truth? A lie? Some combination that won't terrify him but won't give false hope. "Tell him," Maya said carefully, "that I made a promise, and I keep my promises." Sharon relayed the message. Connor's eyes found Maya in the rearview mirror, locked on her face, looking for certainty, for safety, for the kind of absolute faith that only children can give. Maya smiled at him, hoped it looked more confident than she felt. "We're going to make it, buddy, trust me." The mountains began to fall away beneath them, the terrain opening into foothills, then high desert. Maya could see the Vegas Valley in the distance, a sprawl of civilization that meant safety, hospitals, life. But it was still so far, 28 miles. At their current speed, 18 minutes of flight time. 18 minutes. 19 minutes of battery. The math was impossible. Even if everything went perfectly, no more wind shear, no mechanical failures, no navigation errors, they'd arrive with maybe 60 seconds to spare. And nothing had gone perfectly so far. Warning lights began flashing on the instrument panel. Engine temperature in the caution range. Oil pressure fluctuating. The helicopter was screaming that it couldn't maintain this pace, couldn't carry this weight, couldn't sustain the abuse she was demanding. Maya ignored it all, pushed harder. "Captain," Sharon said, her voice cutting through the engine noise with new urgency. "He's crashing." Maya risked a glance back. Connor's eyes had rolled back, his body seizing. The Berlin heart's alarm was shrieking, flow rate dropping, pressure insufficient. The battery display, 16 minutes, but the device was failing faster than predicted. "Start compressions," Maya ordered. "We can't in the helicopter, there's no room." "Then hold him stable and pray that machine keeps working." Sharon and the younger nurse worked frantically, adjusting settings, administering medications from their rapidly dwindling supplies. Maya could hear Sharon counting, timing Connor's heart rate against the machine's output, making calculations that would determine if a 7-year-old lived or died. The Las Vegas Valley spread out below them now, the strip visible in the distance with its ridiculous hotels and fountains. A city built on luck and long odds. Maya had never been a gambling woman, but right now, She was betting everything on a machine that had 15 minutes of life left and a helicopter that might fall apart before they landed. University Medical Center appeared on the horizon. Maya had flown over it a dozen times, never thinking she'd need to land there. The helipad was on the roof, marked with a giant red cross. Standard approach would be from the east, following the flight path that kept them clear of building obstacles. She came in from the west instead, straight line, cutting every corner, violating every safety protocol. The city rose around them. Buildings, power lines, air traffic that she couldn't see and couldn't avoid. Maya was flying on instinct and desperation, trusting that fate wouldn't bring them this far just to kill them in sight of salvation. "Prepare for landing," she called back. "It's going to be rough." The helicopter was vibrating now, the engine making sounds no engine should make. The temperature gauge was buried in the red. Fuel was critically low. They were held together by momentum and miracles. Connor seized again, his small body arching against the restraints. The Berlin Heart's alarm changed pitch, became a steady scream that meant complete system failure was imminent. 12 minutes of battery, but the device was dying faster, the electronics failing under the stress. The helipad rushed up to meet them. Maya could see the trauma team assembled, waiting, alerted somehow to the incoming emergency. Doctors, nurses, equipment, everything Connor needed, if they could just. The engine coughed, sputtered, temperature gauge maxed out. They were still 50 feet up. Maya had seconds to make a decision. Try to nurse the dying helicopter down gently or drop fast and hard before the engine quit completely. Gentle meant safer for everyone. Fast meant getting Connor to the doctors before his artificial heart stopped forever. She dumped collective, let gravity take them. The helicopter fell like a stone, 40 feet, 30, 20. Maya pulled collective at the last possible second, using every bit of remaining engine power to cushion the fall. The skids hit concrete with a bone-jarring impact that shattered something in the landing gear. The helicopter tilted, threatened to roll. Then settled. They were down. Maya killed the engine, what was left of it, and threw open her door. The trauma team was already swarming the helicopter, pulling the side door open, reaching for Connor. Sharon was shouting medical information, medications given, vitals, the Berlin Heart's remaining time. 8 minutes showed on the display, maybe less. They had Connor out in seconds, the backboard lifted by 4 people, racing across the helipad toward the rooftop entrance. His small form disappeared into a crowd of blue scrubs and urgent voices. Maya climbed out on shaking legs. The helicopter behind her was smoking, fluids leaking onto the concrete. It would never fly again. Neither would her career. Sharon appeared beside her, grabbed her in a fierce hug. "You insane, beautiful maniac. You did it. You actually did it." Maya couldn't speak, could only watch as Connor was rushed inside, as the automatic doors closed behind him, as the most intense hour of her life ended in a smoking helicopter on a Las Vegas rooftop. Then she heard the sirens, saw the police vehicles pulling into the hospital parking lot below, saw military police emerging, looking up at the helipad where she stood. She'd saved Connor, now she'd face the consequences. 2 military police officers appeared from the rooftop stairwell, hands on their weapons. "Captain Maya Rodriguez." "That's me." "You're under arrest." Maya didn't resist as they cuffed her, didn't protest, just looked one more time at those hospital doors, at the place where a 7-year-old boy was fighting for his life. Worth it, she thought. Every single second. Worth it. The handcuffs were cold against Maya's wrists, the metal biting into skin still trembling from the flight. She stood on the hospital rooftop, smoke still rising from the destroyed helicopter behind her, while 2 military police officers read her rights in voices that seemed to come from underwater. Everything felt distant, unreal, like watching her life happen to someone else. Do you understand these rights as I have explained them to you?" Maya nodded, unable to find her voice. Her eyes stayed fixed on those hospital doors, willing them to open, willing someone to come out and tell her Connor was okay. But the doors remained closed, holding their secrets. "Captain Rodriguez, we need a verbal response." "Yes, I understand." One of the MPs, a sergeant with a face like carved granite, gestured toward the stairwell. "This way, ma'am." As they led her inside, the hospital exploded into controlled chaos. Doctors and nurses rushed past, their movements urgent but practiced. Maya caught fragments of conversation. 7-year-old male, Berlin heart failure, get or 3 ready, call the transplant team, and each word was a knife to her chest. She'd gotten him here, but had she gotten him here in time? They took her down 3 floors to a small security office, windowless and institutional. The sergeant removed her handcuffs long enough for her to sit, then secured her to the chair. The younger MP, a corporal who couldn't have been more than 22, looked uncomfortable, like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Water," the sergeant offered, his voice marginally softer. "No, thank you." Maya's throat was raw from shouting over the helicopter engine, but water seemed irrelevant right now. The door opened and her commanding officer walked in. Colonel James Mitchell, 48 years old, career Air Force, the man who'd recommended her for promotion twice. His face was a thunderstorm of barely controlled rage. "Everyone out," he said quietly. The MPs exchanged glances but complied, closing the door behind them. The silence that followed was suffocating. "Sir, don't." Mitchell's voice could have cut glass. "Don't say anything, Maya. Because right now, I'm trying very hard not to forget that you're one of the best pilots I've ever commanded, and remember only that you just committed approximately 7 different violations of military law." Maya met his eyes, refusing to look away. "Is he alive?" "What?" "The boy, Connor Hayes, is he alive?" Mitchell's jaw worked. "I don't know. They rushed him into surgery 15 minutes ago, that's all I know." He pulled out a chair, sat down heavily, suddenly looking every one of his 48 years. "Maya, what the hell were you thinking?" "I was thinking a child was dying." There were rescue teams en route, protocols in place, proper channels. Would have taken too long. Maya leaned forward as much as the handcuffs allowed. His artificial heart had 90 minutes of battery. Ground rescue needed at least 2 hours to reach him. You do the math, sir. So you abandoned your post, lied to your commanding officer, stole a civilian aircraft, and flew an unauthorized rescue mission into a Category 2 storm. Mitchell's voice rose with each word. "Do you have any idea what you've done to your career, to this squadron's reputation?" "Yes, sir, I know exactly what I've done." "Then why?" He slammed his hand on the table, making Maya flinch. "Why throw away everything you've worked for, everything you've earned?" Maya thought about how to answer, about the words that might make him understand, but there were no words. There was only a 7-year-old boy asking for his mother, and a choice that wasn't really a choice at all. Because it was the right thing to do. Mitchell stared at her like she'd spoken a foreign language. "The right thing? Maya, you broke the law, multiple laws. You endangered civilians. You could have gotten yourself killed." "But I didn't. And Connor Hayes is in surgery instead of dead in a canyon." "You don't know that. He might still die. And then what? You destroyed your career for nothing." The words hit harder than Maya expected, but she kept her voice steady. "If he dies, at least he'll die in a hospital with doctors fighting for him, not alone in a crashed helicopter with a dead battery. That's not nothing, sir." The door burst open. Sharon, the senior nurse from the helicopter, stood in the doorway, still in her blood-stained scrubs. Her eyes found Maya immediately. "They told me you were here. I had to." She looked at Mitchell. "Sir, I need to speak with Captain Rodriguez." "This isn't a good time." "I don't care." Sharon's voice was steel. "This woman saved my life, saved all our lives, and I'm going to say what I came to say." Mitchell's expression softened slightly. "You were on the medical helicopter." "Yes, sir. I watched this captain fly through conditions that would ground most pilots. Watched her land on a boulder the size of a parking space. Watched her risk everything to pull us out of that canyon." Sharon's voice broke. "Connor was coding when we lifted off. His Berlin heart was failing. We had minutes, not the hours it would have taken for rescue teams. Minutes." Maya blinked back tears. "How is he?" Sharon's face transformed, and Maya saw it before she spoke, the answer written in her expression. "He's in surgery. They're doing an emergency transplant. A donor heart became available 20 minutes ago. It's a miracle. The doctors said if he'd arrived even 5 minutes later, he wouldn't have been stable enough for the surgery." The room seemed to tilt. Maya gripped the edge of the table, the handcuffs rattling. 5 minutes. The difference between landing gently and dropping like a stone. The difference between following protocol and breaking every rule. "They're giving him a new heart." Maya's voice was barely a whisper. "Right now, because you got him here in time." Sharon crossed the room, knelt beside Maya's chair despite Mitchell's presence, and took her hands. "His parents want to thank you. They're in the surgical waiting room and they're calling you a hero." "I'm not a hero. I'm about to be court-martialed." "You're both." Sharon squeezed her hands. "And I'll testify to that. Everything you did, everything you risked. I'll tell them." Mitchell cleared his throat. "Ma'am, I need to ask you to leave. This is a military matter." Sharon stood but didn't move toward the door. "Colonel, I don't know what charges you're planning to bring against Captain Rodriguez, but I know what I saw. I saw someone who chose a child's life over her career, and if that's a crime, then I don't understand justice anymore." She left, the door closing softly behind her. Mitchell and Maya sat in silence. Finally, the colonel spoke, his voice tired. "You understand I have no choice. The regulations are clear. You'll face a court-martial." "I know, sir." "You'll likely be dishonorably discharged." "I know." "You might face prison time." "I know." Maya looked directly at him. "And I'd do it again, tomorrow, every day. Because that's what the uniform is supposed to mean, isn't it? Protecting people, saving lives. Or did I misunderstand the oath I took?" Mitchell stood, walked to the door, paused with his hand on the handle. "For what it's worth, Maya, if it was my kid in that helicopter, I'd want someone like you in the sky." He opened the door. "MPs take her to base. Formal charges will be filed within 24 hours." As they led her out, Maya passed a window overlooking the surgical wing. Somewhere behind those walls, Connor Hayes was getting a new heart, a new life. Worth it, she thought again. Every rule broken, every consequence coming, worth every second. The military courtroom at Nellie's Air Force Base was smaller than Maya expected. No grand mahogany panels or dramatic lighting like in the movies. Just industrial carpet, fluorescent lights, and a judge's bench that looked like it belonged in a high school principal's office. But the weight in the room, that was real. That pressed down like gravity had doubled. Maya sat at the defense table in her dress blues, the uniform that had once represented everything she'd worked for now feeling like a costume. Her attorney, Captain Sarah Chen from JAG, shuffled papers beside her with mechanical efficiency. Sarah was good, everyone said, but they both knew the facts weren't in dispute. Maya had done everything they accused her of. The prosecution had made that abundantly clear over the past 3 days. Major Robert Harrison stood at the prosecutor's table, a career military lawyer with a reputation for winning. He'd methodically presented evidence, flight data showing Maya's unauthorized deviation, radio transcripts of her lying to the tower, testimony from Boulder City Airport staff about the stolen helicopter, damage reports totaling $847,000 in destroyed military and civilian property. "The facts are indisputable," Harrison had said in his opening statement. "Captain Rodriguez abandoned her post during a training exercise. She lied to her commanding officer. She commandeered civilian property without authorization. She flew an unsanctioned rescue mission that endangered lives and violated numerous FAA regulations. Military discipline exists for a reason. Without it, we have chaos. Captain Rodriguez chose chaos over duty. Now on day 4, it was the defense's turn. The gallery was packed, unprecedented for a court-martial. News crews waited outside, barred from the proceedings but hungry for any scrap of information. The story had exploded across social media. Fighter pilot faces prison for saving dying child. Opinion pieces argued both sides. Protesters gathered outside the base gates with signs reading, "Heroes don't deserve jail and rules exist for reasons." Maya tried to ignore it all, tried to focus on the moment. "The defense calls Sharon Reeves," Sarah announced. The senior nurse from the helicopter walked to the witness stand, sworn in, and took her seat. She looked composed, professional, but Maya could see the tension in her shoulders. Sarah approached. "Ms. Reeves, please describe the situation when Captain Rodriguez arrived at the crash site." Sharon's voice was steady. "We were dying, that's the simplest way to put it. Our pilot had a collapsed lung. Connor Hayes, our 7-year-old patient, had less than 40 minutes before his artificial heart's battery failed. The storm was closing in. We'd already accepted that we weren't getting out. And then we heard helicopter rotors. I thought I was hallucinating." Sharon's eyes found Maya. "Captain Rodriguez landed on a boulder barely wide enough for her skids in wind that should have made flight impossible. She made 3 trips, first evacuating us and Connor, then returning for our pilot and the medical equipment. She was overloaded by hundreds of pounds. The helicopter was smoking when we landed, but she got us out." Harrison stood for cross-examination. "Ms. Reeves, you stated the pilot had a collapsed lung. How severe?" "Severe enough that he needed immediate medical attention, but not immediately life-threatening." Sharon hesitated. "Not in the next hour, no." "And you, Ms. Reeves, your injuries?" "Broken ribs, concussion, various lacerations." "Painful, certainly, but you could have waited for proper rescue teams." Harrison's tone was gentle but pointed. "Probably, but Connor couldn't. One patient, one life, and for that one life Captain Rodriguez endangered 5 others, including herself, violated multiple regulations, destroyed nearly $1 million in equipment." Harrison paused. "Is one life worth that cost?" "Yes," Sharon's voice didn't waver. "Absolutely yes." The next witness was Frank Morrison, the helicopter owner. He described Maya's arrival, her desperation, his decision to give her the keys. "Did Captain Rodriguez threaten you?" Sarah asked. "No, ma'am," she asked. "I gave." "Why?" Frank's weathered face creased into something between a smile and a grimace. "Because I'm a father, because I'm a Marine, because sometimes you look at someone and know they're going to do the right thing whether you help or not. I chose to help." Harrison's cross was brief. "Mr. Morrison, you're aware your insurance doesn't cover unauthorized use of your aircraft." "I am. And that you may not be fully compensated for its loss." "I am. Yet you don't blame Captain Rodriguez." Frank looked at Harrison like he'd asked if water was wet. "Son, I blame the storm that brought down that medical helicopter. I blame bad luck and worse timing. I don't blame someone for trying to save a child's life." The courtroom murmured. The judge, Colonel Patricia Winters, a stern woman who'd served in 2 wars, called for order. On day 5, Maya took the stand. Sarah kept her questions simple, let Maya tell the story in her own words. The radio call, the impossible math, the choice that wasn't really a choice. Maya didn't embellish, didn't try to justify, just stated facts. Then Harrison stood for cross-examination, and the room tensed. "Captain Rodriguez, you're aware that rescue helicopters were being dispatched from Nellis?" "Yes, sir." "Proper rescue teams, with medical equipment, trained personnel, coordination with ground units?" "Yes, sir." "Yet you determined that your unauthorized, solo rescue attempt was preferable." Maya met his eyes. I determined that Connor Hayes would be dead before those teams arrived. So yes, sir. You took it upon yourself to make that calculation, to override established protocols and chain of command. I did. Do you understand why that's problematic, Captain? Why we have regulations? I do. Maya's voice was calm. Regulations save lives by preventing chaos and ensuring coordination. They exist for good reasons. I've followed them my entire career. Until you didn't. Until I couldn't. Maya leaned forward slightly. Sir, I knew the consequences when I made that choice. I knew I was ending my career. But I also knew that if I followed protocol, if I waited for proper channels, a 7-year-old boy would die while I watched from 15,000 feet. I couldn't live with that. So you broke the law. Yes, sir, I broke the law. The honesty seemed to catch Harrison off guard. He recovered quickly. And if everyone made such choices, if every officer decided their personal judgment superseded military law, we'd have chaos. Maya didn't blink. You're right, but we'd also have a world where sometimes, when it matters most, someone chooses conscience over convenience. I'm not saying I'm a hero. I'm not asking for a medal. I'm saying I saw a child dying and I had the skills and opportunity to try to save him, so I did. Harrison tried several more angles, but Maya's testimony was unshakable because it was simply true. She'd broken the rules. She'd do it again. She understood there must be consequences. When she stepped down, the courtroom was silent. The prosecution and defense gave closing arguments. Harrison emphasized discipline, order, the necessity of following regulations. Sarah countered with humanity, moral imperative, the difference between technical violation and ethical choice. The judge called for a recess to deliberate. Maya sat in a holding room, Sarah beside her. Through the window, she could see protesters still gathering. Her phone, returned temporarily, showed hundreds of messages. Support, condemnation, everything in between. One message stood out, from an unknown number. Thank you for saving our son. Whatever happens, you're a hero to us. The Hayes family. Attached was a photo. Connor, post-surgery, pale but alive, sleeping in a hospital bed, a new heart beating in his chest. Maya's hands shook as she stared at the image. 6 hours later, they called her back. The courtroom was even more packed now, people standing against the walls. Maya stood as the judge entered. Captain Rodriguez, this court finds you guilty of all charges. Maya's knees weakened, but she stayed standing. However, Judge Winters continued, her voice carrying through the silent room, this court also recognizes extraordinary circumstances. You saved 4 lives, including a child who has since received a successful heart transplant. While your methods violated regulations, your intentions and results cannot be ignored. Maya held her breath. The sentence of this court is formal reprimand, 6 months grounding from flight status, reduction in rank. However, no discharge, no prison time. You will continue to serve, Captain Rodriguez, because the Air Force needs officers who understand both the letter and the spirit of their oath. The gallery erupted, cheers, gasps, shouting. Judge Winters's gavel cracked like thunder. Maya stood motionless, tears streaming down her face, as Sarah grabbed her in a fierce hug. Guilty but free, broken but not shattered. Outside, she faced the cameras, the questions, the chaos. And somewhere in Las Vegas, a 7-year-old boy was learning to live with his new heart. 5 years, 2 months, and 14 days after the trial, Captain Maya Rodriguez stood in front of 43 eager faces at the Top Gun training facility in Nevada. She'd been promoted back to captain after her reduction in rank, earned her instructor certification, and was now responsible for shaping the next generation of fighter pilots. The morning sun streamed through the windows of the briefing room, illuminating faces that reminded her of her younger self, hungry, ambitious, certain that following the rules was the only path to success. Today we're not talking about aerodynamics or weapon systems, Maya began, her voice carrying the weight of experience. Today we're talking about the hardest thing you'll ever do in this uniform, making choices when there is no right answer. She clicked a remote. Behind her an image appeared, a crashed medical helicopter in a narrow canyon. Some of the students shifted uncomfortably. They knew the story. Everyone knew the story. June 15th, 5 years ago, I broke 7 military regulations, lied to my commanding officer, and ended up in a court-martial that nearly destroyed my career. Maya paused, letting the words settle. And I'd do it again tomorrow. A hand shot up. Lieutenant Jamie Martinez, top of her class by the book Perfect. Ma'am, with respect, how is that reconcilable with military discipline? Maya smiled. Good question, the right question. It's not, and that's the point. You're being trained to follow orders, to execute missions, to operate within established protocols. That training will save your lives and the lives of others. But someday, you might face a situation where the rules give you one answer and your conscience gives you another. When that happens, you need to understand the cost of whatever choice you make. She advanced the slide. Connor Hayes, age 7, unconscious in a hospital bed, the Berlin heart device visible beside him. This is Connor Hayes. When I found him, he had 37 minutes before his artificial heart failed. Rescue teams were hours away. The regulations said to wait for proper channels. My conscience said that would mean a dead child. Maya's voice roughened. I chose conscience. I paid the price, and I got to live with that choice. Another slide. Connor at age 8 smiling holding a soccer ball, age 9 at his school science fair, age 10 with his family at the Grand Canyon, age 11 at his sister's graduation, age 12 current photo, healthy and thriving. The cost of breaking rules was 6 months of grounding, a formal reprimand, and a stain on my service record that will never fully disappear. The cost of following rules would have been this boy's life. Maya looked at each student. Which cost can you live with? That's what I need you to think about. The briefing ended. Students filed out, some looking thoughtful, others troubled. Maya gathered her materials, preparing for the tactical flight exercises scheduled for the afternoon. Her phone buzzed, an email notification. The sender made her heart skip, Connor Hayes. Maya had received a letter from Connor every year on June 15th, the anniversary of the rescue. Digital now that he was 12 and lived on his laptop, but the tradition remained sacred. She opened it, settling into a chair. Dear Captain Rodriguez, Mom says I should call you Maya since we're friends now, but that feels weird. You're a superhero to me. Superheroes get titles. Today is 5 years since you saved my life. I'm 12 now, which is crazy because I almost didn't make it to 8. My new heart is still going strong. The doctors say I'm healthier than most kids my age. I played in the soccer championship last week. We won. I scored the winning goal and I thought about you. Wondered if you were watching somehow. 5th grade history class did a unit on heroes. We had to write about someone who showed courage. Everyone picked famous people, Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, soldiers from wars. I picked you. My teacher asked why I picked someone controversial, her word, not mine. I told her that real courage isn't just following orders. It's knowing when to break them. She gave me an A+. I know what you gave up for me. Mom and Dad told me about the trial, the court-martial, everything you lost. I used to feel guilty about that, like I wasn't worth it. But Mom explained that you didn't save me because I was worth more than your career. You saved me because you're the kind of person who can't watch someone die when you have the power to help. That changed how I think about everything. I want to be that kind of person too. I'm applying to the Air Force Academy when I'm old enough. Dad thinks I'm crazy, says I should be a doctor or something safe. But I want to fly, want to be like you. Want to make the hard choices and live with them the way you taught me. There's something I never told you. When I was in that helicopter dying, I wasn't scared of death. I was scared of leaving my mom alone. She'd already lost my dad in a car accident 3 years before. I thought about her getting the call that I was gone too, and it broke my heart more than the heart that was already broken. You gave me back to her, gave her back the chance to see me grow up. That's not just one life you saved, Captain. You saved my mom from grief. You saved my little sister from losing her big brother. You saved my grandparents from burying their grandson. You saved all the people I'll help in my life, all the friends I'll make, maybe someday my own kids. One choice, one impossible, crazy, career-ending choice, and it rippled out into the world like throwing a stone in a lake. I'm writing this from soccer camp, and my heart monitor just beeped to remind me to take my anti-rejection meds. I take them twice a day, and every time I do, I think, Maya Rodriguez made this possible. Thank you doesn't cover it. Thank you is too small for what you did, but thank you anyway. Your friend forever. Connor Hayes. P.S. I'm attaching a photo of my science fair project. I built a model of a Bell 206 helicopter, won second place. The winner made a volcano. Whatever. Maya stared at the screen through blurred vision, tears running freely down her face. She opened the attachment, Connor grinning beside his helicopter model, a blue ribbon pinned to the display board. The project title, The Physics of Impossible Rescues. A knock on the door. Colonel Mitchell entered, older now, grayer, but still carrying the authority that defined him. He'd been promoted to base commander 2 years ago. Still crying over that kid's letters. His tone was gruff, but his eyes were kind. Every year, Maya wiped her face, he wants to be a pilot. Of course he does, you're his hero. Mitchell sat down, got a minute. Yes, sir. I had a meeting with some Pentagon folks yesterday. They're developing a new protocol for emergency situations that require immediate action outside normal channels. Called it the Rodriguez Protocol, off the record. Gives field commanders more discretion in crisis scenarios. He paused. Your court-martial changed things, Maya. Made people realize that sometimes the rules need flexibility. Maya didn't know what to say. You scared the hell out of me that day, Mitchell continued. Thought I was going to lose one of my best pilots to prison or stupidity or both, but you proved something important. You proved that judgment matters, that the person wearing the uniform matters, not just the uniform itself. I just did what felt right, sir. I know that's what makes it matter. He stood to leave, paused at the door. By the way, Connor's parents are in the visitor center. They asked to see you, something about a surprise. Maya's heart raced as she made her way across the base. In 5 years, she'd exchanged emails with the Hayes family, video calls on birthdays and holidays, but they'd never visited the base. They waited in the lobby, Amanda Hayes, Connor's mother, and his younger sister Riley, now 10. Amanda rushed forward, pulling Maya into a tight embrace. Thank you for seeing us, Amanda said, her voice thick with emotion. We wanted to give you this in person. She handed Maya a shadow box frame. Inside was Connor's crayon drawing from the hospital, a helicopter with a pilot wearing a cape, hearts scattered everywhere. But there was more. A photo of Connor now, healthy and vibrant. A piece of the Berlin heart device that had kept him alive, preserved forever. And a small plaque. To Captain Maya Rodriguez, who taught us that heroes aren't people who never break the rules. They're people who know which rules are worth breaking. With eternal gratitude, the Hayes family. Maya's hands trembled holding it. I don't know what to say. Say you'll keep being you, Amanda whispered. Keep teaching those pilots that rules matter, but people matter more. Keep making the impossible choices. The world needs more people willing to risk everything for what's right. That evening, Maya hung the shadow box in her office at the flight school, right above her desk where every student would see it. A reminder, a warning, a promise. Her phone buzzed. Another message from Connor. Forgot to mention I'm starting flight lessons next month. Civilian stuff, but it's a start. Race you to an F-16. Maya laughed through fresh tears, typing back, "You're on, kid, you're on." She looked out the window at the flight line, at jets preparing for sunset exercises, at the endless Nevada sky that had been her home for so long. Somewhere out there, a 12-year-old boy with a transplanted heart was dreaming of flying. And Maya Rodriguez, the fighter pilot who'd broken every rule to save him, knew exactly what that dream felt like. Some choices destroy you, some choices define you. The best choices do both. The end.